The crystal goblet shattered against the marble floor. Queen Maelis didn't flinch. She watched the wine spread like blood across the white stone, watched the young noblewoman who'd thrown it giggle behind her jeweled hand. Lady Constance Marlowe, daughter of the Duke of Westmere, tilted her head with practiced innocence. "Oh, how clumsy of me," Constance said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. She turned to the servant girl frozen beside her. "You there? Clean this. Now." The girl dropped to her knees instantly, hands trembling as she gathered the broken glass. A shard sliced her palm, blood mixed with wine. "Careful," Constance said, stepping over her. "That's expensive wine, more expensive than you." Maelis felt her jaw tighten. Around the great hall, a dozen noble families paraded their daughters before Prince Adrian, each one more adorned than the last. Silk gowns in emerald and sapphire, hair twisted with gold thread, smiles that never reached their eyes. This was the 5th week of courtship rituals. The council had been clear. The prince must choose a bride before summer's end. The kingdom needed an heir. The throne needed stability. But what Maelis saw wasn't stability. It was theater. Lady Vivian Blackthorne whispered to her sister loud enough for servants to hear. "Once I'm queen, I'll replace every servant over 30. Young ones work harder and complain less." Lady Helena Cross examined her reflection in a polished shield. "The crown will look better on me than it ever did on her." Adrian stood near the throne, his face a mask of royal composure. But Maelis knew her son. She saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes dulled with each introduction. He was performing his duty, but his heart wasn't in it. The council believed a powerful marriage would strengthen Eldoria. But Maelis remembered different words, words spoken in firelight and fever. That night, she stood alone in the royal chapel. Moonlight filtered through stained glass, painting the floor in fractured colors. She removed her crown and set it on the altar. "Roderick," she whispered to the empty air, to the memory of her husband. "I don't know if she exists." 5 years ago, King Roderick Valen had lain dying in their bed. The physicians had left. The priests had prayed. Only Maelis remained, holding his hand as his breathing grew shallow. "Promise me something," he'd said, his voice barely audible. "Anything. Don't give our son a woman who wants a crown. Give him one who loves people." He'd squeezed her hand with surprising strength. The kingdom doesn't need another politician. It needs a heart. She'd promised. But now, watching these noble daughters compete like peacocks, that promise felt impossible. Maelis closed her eyes. "If I cannot find her in this palace, then I must look beyond it." The decision settled over her like winter frost. Cold, absolute, irreversible. 3 nights later, she stood in her private chambers with her most trusted handmaid, Liora. "Your Majesty, this is madness," Liora said, her voice shaking. She held up a bundle of torn, filthy clothes. "If the council discovers, they won't." Maelis took the clothes, rough wool, stained with years of use, the fabric of invisibility. "You'll tell them I'm in seclusion, praying, grieving, anything. And if something happens to you, then I was wrong about everything." Maelis began removing her rings, her necklaces, every piece of gold that marked her station. "But I have to know, Liora. I have to know if goodness still exists outside these walls." She wrapped her hair in a dirty scarf, rubbed ash into her skin, bent her spine like age and hardship had broken it. When she looked in the mirror, Queen Maelis Valen had vanished. In her place stood an old woman, nameless, worthless, invisible. "Old Mara," she said softly. "That's who I'll be." Ilara's eyes filled with tears. "How long?" "As long as it takes." The palace had a dozen secret passages. Maelis had learned them as a young bride, escaping the suffocation of court life for stolen moments of freedom. Now she used them to escape entirely. The servants' exit opened into an alley behind the kitchen. No guards, no witnesses, just shadows and the stench of rotting vegetables. Maelis stepped into the night and felt the palace gates close behind her, not physically, but spiritually. Every step away from that golden cage was a step into truth, or so she hoped. Stonevale Market emerged from darkness like a living creature. Even at dawn, it pulsed with noise and movement. Vendors shouted, children ran between carts. The smell of fish and sweat and desperation hung thick in the air. Maelis moved through it slowly, hunched over a walking stick she'd found, dragging a waste collector's cart. She'd tied rags around her hands, kept her face down. Within an hour, she understood how invisible poverty made you. A baker tossed stale bread into the gutter. When Maelis reached for it, he kicked it further away. "Get your filth away from my shop." A merchant spilled a basket of apples. They rolled across the cobblestones. Maelis bent to help gather them. "Don't touch those." The merchant struck her hand with a stick. "You'll contaminate them." A young girl, no more than 10, walked past with her mother. She stared at Maelis with undisguised disgust. "Mama, why doesn't someone make her leave?" The mother pulled her daughter closer. "Don't look at her, darling. Poverty is contagious." Maelis felt something crack inside her chest. These were her people, her citizens, and they looked at suffering like it was a disease. By midday, she'd collected nothing but bruises and contempt. She sat near the public well, her cart empty, her body aching. The well was the heart of the lower district, where people came not just for water, but for gossip, for news, for connection. She watched a woman fill buckets for her master's house, watched a father teach his son to work the pulley, watched life happen around her while she remained invisible. Then she heard it. "Please, I just need enough for—" I said no credit. A young woman stood at a bread vendor's stall. Early 20s, plain brown dress, hands raw from work. She held out 3 copper coins. "This is all I have," she said quietly. "Could I take half a loaf?" "Half a loaf?" The vendor laughed. "That's not even enough for the heel. Get out of here." "Please, my sisters are hungry." "Not my problem." He turned his back. The young woman stood there for a moment, coins in her palm, shoulders trembling. Then she carefully pocketed the money and walked away. She didn't cry, didn't curse, just accepted it. Maelis watched her approach the well. The young woman filled a bucket, tested its weight, then began the walk home. She looked tired, not the tiredness of a single day, but the exhaustion that settles into bones after years of carrying more than you should. Halfway down the street, her bucket tipped. Water splashed across the stones. "No, no, no." The young woman set it down, staring at the puddle like it was spilled gold. Maelis found herself standing, moving forward. "Here." The young woman startled, eyes wide. For a moment, Maelis saw recognition flicker, not of her identity, but of her humanity. Most people looked through beggars. This woman looked at her. I don't need help," the young woman said softly. "Neither do I," Maelis replied, her voice rough from disuse. "But here we are." She helped refill the bucket. Together they walked back toward the well. The young woman moved slowly, adjusting her pace to match Maelis's feigned frailty. "What's your name?" Maelis asked. "Liora. Liora Ashen." "Do you live far, Liora?" "Near the eastern gate, with my stepmother and stepsisters." Something flickered in Liora's eyes, not quite pain, but its shadow. "And you?" "I'm nowhere, really. I'm Mara, old Mara." They reached the well. Liora filled her bucket again, then paused. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small cloth bundle, unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a piece of bread, hard, dark, barely enough for one person. She broke it in half and offered it to Maelis. "Please," Liora said, "you look hungry." Maelis stared at the bread, at this young woman who had nothing offering half of that nothing. "I couldn't—" "It's all I have," Liora said simply. "But it's enough to share." Maelis took the bread, felt its weight, felt something shift in the universe. "Why?" she whispered. Liora smiled, small, sad, genuine. "Because no one should be invisible." Then she lifted her bucket and walked away, leaving Maelis standing in the morning sun with half a piece of bread and a question burning in her heart. Could this be her? Maelis followed Liora through winding streets, kept her distance, watched. The house was small, wedged between a tannery and a closed shop, paint peeling, roof sagging, the kind of place that whispered of better days long gone. Liora knocked 3 times before entering. Maelis crept closer, peering through a crack in the shutters. Inside, a woman sat in the only comfortable chair. Madame Verena Ashen, tall, sharp-faced, draped in a dress that was fine once, but now strained at the seams. 2 younger women flanked her, both pretty in that calculated way that required hours of effort. "You're late," Verena said without looking up. "I'm sorry. The baker wouldn't—" "I don't care about your excuses." Verena finally looked at Liora. "Did you get the bread?" "No, ma'am. I didn't have enough coin." "Useless." Verena's eldest daughter, Cassia, laughed. "Absolutely useless." "We'll starve because of you," the younger daughter, Brenna, added. Liora set down the water bucket. "I brought fresh water, and you can get out of my sight." Verena stood. "Your father left me with nothing but debts and you. Every day you're here is another day of my suffering." "I'm sorry," Liora said quietly. "Sorry doesn't feed us." Verena's hand moved faster than Maelis expected. The slap echoed through the small house. Liora's head snapped to the side. She didn't raise her hand to her cheek, didn't fight back, just stood there, absorbing it. "Now get upstairs and mend Cassia's dress," Verena said, "and don't come down until it's perfect." Liora bowed, actually bowed, and walked up the narrow stairs. Maelis's hands clenched. She'd seen enough cruelty in court to recognize it in any form, but court cruelty was decorated with manners and smiles. This was raw, honest in its ugliness, and Liora had endured it with grace. Over the next week, Maelis made camp in the alley behind Liora's house. She watched through windows, listened through walls, built a picture of a life that made her heart ache. Every morning, Liora woke before dawn, fetched water, lit the fire, made porridge with whatever scraps remained. She ate last and least. Every afternoon, she mended clothes, scrubbed floors, ran errands. She moved through the house like a ghost, present but unacknowledged, necessary but unwanted. Every night, she slept in a corner of the attic on a pile of old blankets. And through it all, she never complained, never stole, though opportunities were constant, never abandoned her post, though freedom was just a door away. But was it endurance or just fear? Maelis needed to test her. The first test came at dawn. Maelis lay in the alley, moaning softly. She'd torn her dress further, smeared dirt on her face, made herself as pitiful as possible. Footsteps approached. Liora heading to the well. "Help," Maelis croaked. "Please." Liora stopped, hesitated. Maelis saw the calculation in her eyes. Help this stranger and risk Verina's wrath, or keep walking and protect herself. Liora knelt beside her. "What happened?" she whispered, checking Maelis for injuries. "Fell. Can't get up. Hold on." Liora looked back at her. House. Verina would be waking soon. Every minute of delay was a minute of future punishment. But Liora helped Maelis sit, gave her water from her own flask, waited until Maelis could stand. "Thank you," Maelis said. "Are you sure you're all right?" Genuine concern in those eyes. Better now. Liora glanced at the rising sun. Fear crossed her face. She was already late. But she smiled anyway. "Be careful, Mara. The streets are dangerous." She hurried away. 10 minutes later, Maelis heard shouting from the house. Verina's voice, shrill with rage, a door slamming. Liora sent out without breakfast as punishment for tardiness. The first test was passed, compassion in the face of personal cost. But Maelis needed to be certain. The second test came 3 days later. Maelis waited near the market, disguised as a merchant's assistant. She'd borrowed cleaner clothes from Alara, made herself look respectable enough to be believed. When Liora passed, Maelis called out, "Excuse me, miss, you're Liora Ashen, aren't you?" Liora turned, wary. "Yes? I have a proposition." Maelis lowered her voice, made it conspiratorial. "I work for a family in the upper district. They're looking for information about people." "Information?" "About an old woman, seen begging near your house, calls herself Mara." Maelis watched Liora's face carefully. "My employers want to know about her, where she goes, who she talks to. They'll pay well, 5 gold coins. 5 gold coins, enough to feed a family for months, enough to buy freedom." Liora's eyes widened. "Why do they want to know? Does it matter?" Maelis held up a single gold coin. "This is yours right now. Just tell me what you know." For a heartbeat, Liora stared at that coin. Maelis saw hunger there, not for food, but for escape, saw the temptation burning bright. Then Liora stepped back. "I don't know anything about her," she said quietly. "And if I did, I wouldn't sell it. 5 gold coins. I don't sell people." Liora's voice was firm. "Whatever your employers want, they can ask her themselves." She walked away. Maelis stood there, gold coin in hand, something warm and painful blooming in her chest. The second test was passed, integrity beyond temptation. But there was one more test, the hardest one. Maelis waited until nightfall, until the house was dark and sleeping. Then she slipped inside through the kitchen window. Lock-picking was another skill she'd learned in her youth, and planted a silver bracelet in Liora's apron pocket. The next morning, she watched through the shutters. "Thief!" Verina's scream shattered the morning calm. She held up the bracelet. "You stole this." Liora stared at it, confused. I didn't." "Liar." Verina grabbed Liora's arm, shaking her. "I knew you were stealing from me. I knew it." "Mother, please, I didn't take it." "Don't call me mother." The slap was harder this time. Liora stumbled back. "You're not my daughter. You're a burden, a parasite, and now you're a criminal." Cassia and Brenna appeared, drawn by the noise. They looked delighted. "We should report her to the magistrate," Cassia said. "She'll be flogged," Brenna added gleefully. Leora's face had gone pale, but her voice stayed steady. "I didn't steal anything. I swear on my father's grave." "Your father." Verina's voice turned to ice. "Your father left me with nothing but you, and now you steal from me too?" She pointed at the door. "Get out. Sleep in the streets tonight. Maybe that will teach you about theft." "Please." "Out." Liora didn't argue. She walked to the door, head high, and stepped into the evening air without her cloak, without food, without shelter. The door slammed behind her. Maelis followed her through the darkening streets, watched her find a corner behind a closed shop, watched her curl up on the cold stones, arms wrapped around herself. And Maelis waited for anger, for tears, for curses against the injustice. Instead, she heard prayer. "Father," Liora whispered to the empty air, her voice barely audible. "If you can hear me, I don't understand why this is happening, but help me endure it. Help me stay good, even when goodness hurts. No bitterness, no self-pity, just quiet faith." Maelis stepped out from the shadows, removed the bracelet from her own pocket. She'd retrieved it while Verina screamed, placed it silently beside Liora along with a clean blanket. Then she walked away, her eyes burning, her heart certain. This was the one. This was the soul her husband had begged her to find. Now came the dangerous part. 3 days later, a royal emissary appeared at Verina's door. Tall, official, wearing the king's colors. Behind him stood palace guards. "Madam Verina Ashen?" the emissary asked. Verina nearly fainted. "Yes, my lord?" "The palace requires temporary household staff for an upcoming event. Your stepdaughter, Liora Ashen, has been selected." Silence. Then Verina's face twisted into something between rage and disbelief. "Liora," she said, "there must be a mistake." "There is no mistake. She will come with us now." Liora appeared at the top of the stairs, pale and confused. "Me?" "Gather your belongings," the emissary said. "You leave immediately." Verina grabbed the emissary's arm. "My daughters, Cassia and Brenna, they're much more suitable. The selection has been made." Within minutes, Liora stood in the street with a small bundle of belongings, staring at the palace carriage like it was a dragon. Verina watched from the doorway, her face purple with fury. "Don't embarrass yourself," Verina hissed. "You'll be scrubbing floors. That's all you're good for." Liora climbed into the carriage. As it pulled away, she looked back once at the only home she'd known, not with longing, just acknowledgement. Maelis watched from a rooftop, her heart pounding. The game had changed. Now the real test began. Would goodness survive proximity to power? The palace swallowed Liora whole. She stood in the servants' entrance, staring up at ceilings painted with gold and marble columns that reached toward heaven itself. "First time?" A kind voice spoke beside her. Liora turned to find an older woman, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing the head servant's keys. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Liora Ashen." "Seren, I run the household staff." She studied Liora carefully. "You've worked in service before?" "At home, for my stepmother." "This will be different, harder, the nobles." Seren paused. "They can be cruel. Keep your head down. Do your work. Don't give them reasons to notice you." "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Come with me." The palace was a maze. Endless corridors, hidden staircases, rooms that seemed to multiply when you weren't looking. Seren walked quickly, pointing out important locations, the kitchens, the washing rooms, the servants' quarters. "You'll be assigned to the Great Hall," Seren said. Cleaning, serving, whatever's needed. The prince is hosting a banquet tomorrow night. All hands required." "The prince?" Liora's voice went small. "Adrian Valen. Good man, from what I've seen. But he's surrounded by vipers." Seren stopped at a small door. "This is your room. You share it with 3 others. Meals are at dawn and dusk. Work is from sunrise to midnight. Questions? Why was I chosen?" Serene's eyes softened. "I don't know, child, but someone thinks you belong here." The first day was a blur of motion and pain. Liora scrubbed floors until her knees bled, polished silver until her hands cramped, carried water jugs upstairs that seemed designed to break spirits. And everywhere she felt eyes watching. The other servants whispered when she passed. The nobles smirked when she served them. She dropped a plate during lunch. It shattered, and Lady Constance Marlowe laughed loud enough for the entire hall to hear. "Is this the best the palace can find?" Constance said. "She's trembling like a frightened rabbit." "Perhaps she's never seen real wealth before," Lady Vivian added. "Poor thing probably thinks the silver is fake." Liora kept her head down, cleaned the mess, didn't respond. But she felt something shift inside her. This was familiar. The mockery, the cruelty, the constant belittlement, just wearing different clothes. That evening, she found a quiet corner near the chapel, just needed a moment to breathe, to remember who she was. "Are you hurt?" Liora spun around. A man stood in the shadows, tall, dark-haired, wearing simple but fine clothing. Not a servant. Not quite a noble either. "I'm fine, sir," she said quickly, bowing. "You dropped the plate earlier. Lady Constance shouldn't have laughed." She had every right. No one has the right to mock someone for being human. He stepped closer, not threatening, curious. "What's your name?" "Liora Ashen, sir." "I'm Adrian." Her eyes went wide. She dropped into a deeper bow, nearly falling over. "Your Highness, I'm so sorry, I didn't recognize." "Please," he held up a hand. "None of that. I'm asking as one person to another. Are you all right?" She didn't know how to answer that, couldn't remember the last time someone had asked. "I'm managing, Your Highness." He smiled. Small, sad, understanding. That's what people say when they're not all right but don't want to burden anyone. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Adrian straightened, his face shifting into a more formal mask. "I should go. But Liora, if anyone treats you poorly, tell Seren. She'll handle it." "Yes, Your Highness." He walked away, leaving her standing there with a strange warmth in her chest. Someone had seen her, really seen her. The banquet arrived like a storm. The great hall transformed into something from a dream. Flowers everywhere, candles floating in crystal bowls, musicians playing strings that wept and soared. Liora worked the edges, refilling wine goblets, clearing plates, staying invisible. She'd gotten better at it, moving through crowds like water through stones, until she saw the ring. It lay under a table, half hidden by a dropped napkin. Gold, set with a ruby the size of a thumb, the kind of thing that could change a life. Liora picked it up, felt its weight, felt temptation whisper in her ear. You could leave. Tonight. Walk out the servants' gate with this in your pocket. Sell it in the lower districts. Buy freedom. Her hand closed around it. Then she walked to the head servant's station, placed the ring on Seren's desk. Found this under table 7, Liora said quietly. Seren stared at her, at the ring, at Liora. You could have kept it. It's not mine. No one would have known. Liora met her eyes. I would have known. Something changed in Seren's face. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "Thank you, child. This belongs to Lady Helena. She'll be grateful." Liora returned to work, but Adrian had been watching. He'd seen the whole thing from across the room, seen her find the ring, seen the moment of temptation, seen her choice. His mother's words echoed in his mind. "The true test of character is what you do when no one is watching." Except someone had been watching. That night, Maelis stood in her private chambers, staring at reports from Seren. Every action, every interaction, every small moment of Liora's time in the palace. She'd passed every test: kindness under pressure, integrity beyond temptation, grace through humiliation, honesty when theft would go unnoticed. But there was one final confirmation needed. One final truth to reveal. Maelis sent for Liora. The summons came at midnight. A palace guard appeared at the servants' quarters, asking for Liora Ashen. The other servants stared as she followed him through empty corridors, heart pounding. She was led to a private chamber she'd never seen before. Small, intimate, lit by a single candelabra. A woman sat in a chair by the window, her back to the door. "Come in, Liora," the woman said. "Close the door." Liora obeyed, hands shaking. The woman stood and turned. It took a moment. The woman was dressed plainly, her hair down, no crown or jewels, but the face. Liora's legs gave out. She fell to her knees. "Your Majesty, please, stand up." Maelis moved forward, gently lifting her. "I need you to listen very carefully. I don't understand. Do you remember an old woman near your home, calls herself Mara?" Liora's face went pale. "Yes, I gave her bread, helped her once. Did something happen to her? She's standing in front of you." Silence, complete, ringing silence. Maelis watched understanding dawn in Liora's eyes, watched the pieces connect, the disguise, the tests, the summons. "You?" Liora's voice broke. "The bracelet, the false accusation. That was a test. I'm sorry." "Why?" Tears started falling, not from fear, from confusion. "Why would you?" "Because I made a promise." Maelis took Liora's hands. "My husband, the late king, made me promise to find my son a woman who loves people more than power. A woman who chooses kindness when it costs her everything. A woman who remains good even when the world is cruel. I'm nobody." "You are exactly who I've been searching for." Liora pulled her hands away, backing toward the door. "This isn't real. This is a mistake. I'm a servant, a stepdaughter no one wanted. I can't—" "Liora." Maelis's voice was gentle but firm. "You passed every test I set before you, not because you wanted a reward, not because you knew you were being watched, but because goodness is who you are. It's in your bones." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I would like to introduce you to my son, not as a servant, as a person of worth. He would never. People like me don't marry princes. People like you are exactly who. Will you allow me to introduce you properly to Adrian, to give him the chance to know you as I have?" Liora stared at her, tears streaming, body shaking. "What if I fail?" "Then you fail as yourself. There's no test anymore, Liora. Just truth." For a long moment, Liora didn't move. Then, slowly, she nodded. The introduction happened 3 days later. Not in the great hall, not with announcements or ceremony, just a private garden, afternoon sun, 2 people meeting as equals. Adrian arrived first, confused by his mother's summons. "What's this about?" "Someone I want you to meet." Maelis gestured to a bench. "Sit, Listen, and for once in your royal life, forget about duty and politics." Liora appeared through the garden gate. She wore a simple blue dress, not servant's clothes, but not noble finery either, just herself. Adrian stood. "Liora?" "Your Highness." She curtsied, awkward but sincere. "Please, sit." He indicated the bench. "My mother said you're someone worth knowing." Maelis smiled. "I'll leave you two to talk." "Wait." Liora's panic was visible. "You'll be fine," Maelis said softly. Then she left them alone. Silence stretched between them. Adrian broke it first. "I saw you return that ring," he said, "at the banquet." "You saw that?" "I see more than people think," he smiled. "Occupational hazard of being royal. Everyone performs for me, but you didn't know anyone was watching." "I just did what was right." "That's exactly my point." He leaned forward. "Tell me about yourself, not the palace version, the real version." And Liora, carefully at first and then more freely, began to talk. About her father, about Verena, about surviving without becoming bitter, about small kindnesses that kept her human. Adrian listened, really listened, asked questions, laughed at her stories, shared his own frustrations with palace life. Hours passed like minutes. When Maelis returned at sunset, she found them still talking, leaning close, smiling. She didn't interrupt, just watched from a distance, her heart full. Over the following weeks, Adrian and Liora saw each other daily, sometimes in the garden, sometimes walking the palace grounds, always talking, learning, discovering. There was no formal courtship, no political strategy, just two people falling in love the old-fashioned way, slowly, carefully, honestly. The court noticed. Whispers spread. The noble families who'd presented their daughters as marriage prospects began to panic. Lady Constance confronted Liora in a hallway. "What are you doing?" "I'm sorry?" Liora had been carrying linens, surprised by the ambush. "Don't play innocent." Constance's voice dripped venom. "Everyone sees you with the prince. You think you can steal what's meant for us?" "I'm not stealing anything. You're a servant, a nobody. You don't belong here." Constance stepped closer. "Whatever spell you've cast, it won't last. The prince will see through you eventually." "I'm not casting any spell. I'm just what? Being yourself?" Constance laughed. "Yourself is nothing. You're common, poor, broken. The prince deserves better." Liora felt the old familiar shame rising, the voice that said she wasn't enough, would never be enough. Then she remembered the Queen's words. "Goodness is who you are. It's in your bones." "Maybe you're right," Liora said quietly. "Maybe I am common, but I'd rather be a good commoner than a cruel noble." She walked past Constance, head high. Behind her, Constance's face twisted with rage. The confrontation reached Maelis within the hour. She called an emergency meeting of the Royal Council. "The prince has made his choice," she announced. "Your Majesty," Lord Blackthorne objected. "With all respect, we haven't even completed the formal courtship process." "The process is complete. But the girl has no family, no dowry, no political connections. She has character." Maelis's voice cut through the room like a blade. "She has integrity, and she has my blessing. The kingdom needs strategic alliances. The kingdom needs a heart." Maelis stood. "My late husband understood this. He knew that a throne built only on power would crumble. We need goodness at the center of our rule. Not politics, not wealth. Goodness." Lord Marlowe stood, furious. You're letting sentiment cloud your judgment. No, I'm letting wisdom guide it. She looked around the table. Every one of you has presented your daughters as perfect wives, but I've seen how they treat servants. I've heard what they say when they think no one important is listening. Power without compassion is tyranny, and I will not condemn my son to rule beside a tyrant. Silence fell heavy across the chamber. The engagement will be announced in 3 days, Maelis continued. Anyone who cannot support this decision may leave court. Permanently. No one moved. No one dared. Adrian stood beside his mother. I love her, he said simply. Not because she's perfect, but because she's good, and that's all I've ever wanted. The council had no response to that. 3 days later, the great hall filled with nobles, merchants, and citizens alike. Word had spread quickly. The prince would announce his bride. The noble families arrived in force, their daughters dressed in their finest, each one hoping for a miracle reversal. Lady Constance wore crimson silk. Lady Vivian sparkled with diamonds. Lady Helena had gold threaded through her hair. They lined up near the throne, vultures waiting for a feast. Then the doors opened again. Madame Verena Ashen entered with her daughters, looking confused and angry. Behind them, palace guards ensured they couldn't leave. Why are we here? Verena hissed at the nearest official. The Queen's command, he replied. All parties involved must be present. Verena's face went pale. Parties involved in what? She received no answer. Trumpets sounded. The room fell silent. Queen Maelis entered first, regal and composed, her crown catching candlelight. Prince Adrian followed, handsome in formal attire. And behind them, moving with careful grace, came Liora. She wore a gown of deep blue, elegant but not ostentatious. Her hair was simply arranged, no jewels except for a single pendant around her neck. She looked terrified and brave in equal measure. Verena's eyes went wide. No, she whispered. No, that's not possible. People of Eldoria. Adrian's voice rang clear. Thank you for attending this announcement. I know many of you expected me to choose a bride from among the noble houses, but my mother taught me something important. True worth cannot be measured by bloodlines or bank accounts. He extended his hand. Liora took it, trembling. I have found in Liora Ashen a woman of extraordinary character. She has shown kindness when cruelty would be easier, integrity when theft would go unnoticed, grace through humiliation, strength through suffering. His voice softened. And she has shown me what it means to love without agenda. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Therefore, with my mother's blessing and my own heart's certainty, I am proud to announce my engagement to Liora Ashen. The room erupted, some in applause, others in shock. The noble families stood frozen, faces twisted with disbelief and rage. But Adrian only looked at Liora. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down her face. Yes, she whispered. Yes. He kissed her hand. The crowd's noise faded into background thunder. Then Maelis stepped forward. Madame Verena Ashen, step forward, please. Verena looked like she might faint. Her daughters held her arms as she approached the throne, shaking. Your Majesty, I don't understand. Don't you? Maelis descended the steps slowly. You took in a young girl after her father died, a girl who worked without complaint, who served without stealing, who endured abuse with grace. She was my stepdaughter. I provided for her. You provided nothing but cruelty. Maelis's voice was cold. I know this because I saw it firsthand. I lived in the streets near your home. I watched you beat her for imagined crimes, lock her out in the cold, starve her while you ate. Verina's face went white. You were... Old Mara. Maelis smiled without warmth. The beggar woman your stepdaughter fed, the stranger she showed kindness to, the invisible woman you never noticed because poverty made me beneath your notice. The crowd murmured. This story was spreading like wildfire. While you called her worthless, Maelis continued, she was passing every test I set before her. While you diminished her, she was proving herself more royal than any titled lady in this room. Verina dropped to her knees. Your Majesty, please, I didn't know. That's precisely the point. Maelis's voice cut sharp. You didn't know who she would become, so you treated her like nothing. But character isn't determined by destiny. It's revealed by choices. And every choice you made showed me exactly who you are. Please, I beg forgiveness. I'm not the one you should beg. Maelis gestured to Liora. She is. Every eye turned to Liora. She stood beside Adrian, looking at the woman who had made her life misery, the woman who had struck her, starved her, diminished her. The room waited for revenge. Liora stepped forward, looked down at Verina, kneeling before her. Stand up, she said quietly. Verina stood, shaking. You were cruel to me, Liora said. You made me feel worthless. You took everything my father left and gave me nothing but pain. I'm sorry. No, you're not. Liora's voice was gentle but firm. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry I'm wearing a crown instead of scrubbing your floors. But you're not sorry for what you did to me. Verina's mouth opened and closed. No words came. But I won't become like you. Liora took a breath. I could have you banished, stripped of property, thrown into the same poverty you kept me in. The court would support it. Adrian would support it. The queen would support it. Hope flickered in Verina's eyes. But I won't, Liora continued. Not because you deserve mercy, but because I deserve to be free of bitterness. I choose to let you go, not for your sake, but for mine. You can keep your home, keep your daughters, keep your life, but you'll keep it knowing that the girl you called worthless is now a queen, and there's nothing you can do to change that. Silence. Absolute, reverent silence. Then Adrian began clapping. Slowly, deliberately. Others joined. The applause built until the hall shook with it. Verina stumbled backward, her daughters supporting her. They fled through the crowd, faces burning with shame. Maelis placed a hand on Liora's shoulder. Your father would be proud, she whispered. Liora turned and embraced her. Two women who had found each other through disguise and truth, now bound by love and respect. The wedding took place 6 weeks later. The entire kingdom celebrated. Streets filled with flowers. Musicians played in every square. Children danced in fountains. In the royal chapel, Liora walked down the aisle wearing white silk and her father's pendant. No jewels, no crown yet, just herself. Adrian met her at the altar, eyes bright. You sure about this? He whispered. Last chance to run. I've been running all my life, she whispered back. I'm tired. I want to stay. Then stay forever. Deal. The priest blessed them. They spoke vows written from their hearts, not from tradition. Promised to love, not just in plenty, but in poverty. Not just in joy, but in sorrow. Not just when it was easy, but especially when it was hard. When Adrian kissed her, the chapel bells rang. The sound carried across Eldoria, announcing a new era. At the reception, Maelis stood at the balcony watching her son dance with his new wife. Seren joined her. "You found her," Seren said quietly. "The one the king asked for." "She found me," Maelis corrected. "I just recognized her when she did." "What will you do now?" Maelis smiled. "Step back. Let them lead. They don't need me hovering." "You'll never stop being queen." "No, but I can stop standing in front of them." Maelis watched Liora laugh at something Adrian said. "She'll be a better queen than I ever was, because she knows what it means to suffer, and that knowledge will make her kind." Below, Adrian spun Liora across the floor. She stumbled, still not used to formal dancing, and he caught her. They laughed together, two people choosing joy. The coronation came 3 months later. Liora knelt before the high priest while the kingdom watched. Adrian stood beside her, his crown already in place. The priest lifted the queen's crown, ancient, heavy, studded with sapphires and diamonds. "Do you swear to serve Eldoria with wisdom and compassion?" "I do." "Do you swear to protect the weak and challenge the powerful?" "I do." "Do you swear to remember where you came from, even as you claim where you're going?" Liora's voice caught. "I do." The crown lowered onto her head, weight and responsibility and hope all at once. "Rise, Queen Liora Valen." She stood. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Liora looked past them, scanning the audience until she found one face. In the back row, dressed simply, sat Maelis, no longer wearing her own crown, just a woman watching her son and daughter begin their reign. Liora mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." Maelis nodded, then she slipped out through a side door, leaving them to their moment. Later that night, Liora found her in the garden. The older queen sat on the same bench where she'd first introduced Liora to Adrian. "I thought I'd find you here," Liora said, sitting beside her. "Couldn't sleep?" "Too much crown, not enough pillow." Liora smiled. "You left early. It was your day, not mine. It was our day." Liora took Maelis's hand. "None of this happens without you. You risked everything to find me." "I risked nothing. You earned everything." "Why did you really do it?" Liora asked. "The disguise, the tests. Why go to such extremes?" Maelis was quiet for a moment. "Because my husband taught me that a kingdom's strength isn't measured by its armies or wealth. It's measured by how it treats the least among us. And I needed to know, really know, if goodness still existed in a world that rewards cruelty. And you proved it does. Not perfectly, not easily, but persistently." Maelis squeezed her hand. "You stayed good when being good hurt. That's the rarest thing in the world." "I'm terrified," Liora admitted. "What if I fail? What if I'm not queen enough?" "Then you'll fail honestly, and you'll get up and try again." Maelis smiled. "That's all any of us can do, even queens." They sat together in comfortable silence, 2 women from different worlds who'd found each other in the space between power and poverty. Years later, Queen Liora Valen would be remembered as one of Eldoria's greatest rulers. She opened the palace to the poor, created schools for servants' children, walked the streets in disguise, just as Maelis had, to understand her people. She never forgot where she came from, never pretended the crown erased her past. Instead, she used that past to build a better future. And sometimes, late at night, she would visit the servants' quarters, sit with the tired maids and kitchen boys, listen to their stories, remind them that they mattered, because once someone had done the same for her. In the great hall, a new portrait was unveiled. It showed three figures, King Adrian in the center, Queen Liora on his right, and Queen Mother Maelis on his left. But beneath the formal painting was an inscription, written in Liora's own hand. True royalty is not inherited, it is revealed. People came from across the kingdom to see it, to read those words, to remember that worth isn't determined by birth, but by choices made when no one is watching. And in a small house near the eastern gate, Madame Verena Ashen hung a painting of her own. Not a portrait, just a simple landscape. But sometimes, when she looked at it, she saw the ghost of a girl she'd underestimated. A girl who became a queen. That image haunted her more than any punishment ever could, because the greatest revenge isn't cruelty. It's living well. It's rising above. It's proving that kindness, not bitterness, is the ultimate power. Liora had proven that, and the kingdom would never forget. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that goodness matters even when the world is cruel, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below telling me about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that celebrate the power of character over circumstance. And hit that like button if you believe, like Queen Maelis and Queen Liora, that true nobility is revealed through our choices, not our circumstances. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that their goodness matters, that their kindness counts, that who they are when no one is watching defines who they'll become when everyone is. Share this story. Let it remind people that even in a world obsessed with power and position,